Welcome to Kino Society with Owen Shapiro. Welcome to Kino Society. In today's episode, we have Ryan Liebert, a film editor that brings a dynamic and efficient approach to the edit with specific focus on emotion, pacing, and audience engagement. Welcome to Kino Society, Ryan.
Hey, Owen, thanks for having me.
Would you mind telling us a bit about your background and what attracted you to editing above all other industry jobs?
Yeah, sure. So about 12 years ago, when I was finishing up college, I kind of was looking for what to do. And I used to be really into skateboarding and snowboarding and making skateboarding and snowboarding films. And I started editing those for fun. And while I was in college, I took a intro to digital film class that taught us Final Cut Pro. And, I just really took to it and liked it a lot and, got a lot of satisfaction out of that first video that I was able to create from nothing and present and get good feedback on. So I kind of quickly made a decision when I was a junior in college that that's what I was going to do. So in between my junior and senior year of college, I went to Los Angeles. I'm from Vermont, so I'm from a really small state. And so I went to California where there's a lot more opportunities and a lot more people to learn from, eager to start a career editing movies. Now, it was not an overnight thing by any means. I had to really earn everything I've got and build it through relationships with other filmmakers who also kind of migrated to LA from the East Coast. So, back in 2011, some friends and I basically self-funded our first feature film to where we were all doing, he was the director, we had a writer, and, we were all basically funding our own films so that we could do the jobs that we wanted to do. And through that process, we really learned how hard it is to tell a engaging story for 90 minutes, but B, that I really liked it. And it was just this insane challenge that had a lot of ups and downs, and it just fed us that we wanted more and to make more movies. So about 2 years later, we made another movie with about double the budget, better camera, better actors, bigger script. And again, that was another huge learning curve where we did a lot right, we did a lot wrong. So then after that, a couple years of that, meanwhile I'm working a day job just trying to make rent in California, editing a movie at night. Those are huge stepping stones as far as me being able to understand that I know how to manage a project of that size. I know how to tell a story over that long, building relationships with directors and all of that. And through that, I started networking with a lot of people, cinematographers, producers, and all this. And as we grew in the industry, we would help each other out with jobs. And that kind of led me all the way through 3 or 4 more films throughout 2014, 15, and 16. And then, and also a lot of short films too. A lot of people make short films because that they have limited budget and they have an idea, but they can't get funding for a full feature. So, I've done about 15 or 20 short films over the years too, all in the effort to build relationships with directors. And, those have paid off through smaller jobs, not necessarily film work, but, eventually have led to second and third films. And then most recently, I kind of used all of those connections and all those resources to get myself on Willys Wonderland, which was my biggest film to date. It had a $5.5 million budget. It had Nick Cage in it. It was shooting in Atlanta. So I finally felt like I pushed into that next tier of low budget, still low budget filmmaking, but it was a step that was necessary. But it took 8 to 10 years for that to really be an option for me. So a lot of hard work, a lot of drive, passion, late nights, and willing to work for free or for cheap, just because I knew that I was putting it towards the next project. And even today, I'm still not where I want to be, obviously, but I'm making head ground with every film that I do. So with the release of Willys, it actually opened up another project for me. So starting next week, I'm starting another film, still on the low budget side, but it's more work in the film industry. It's more time telling stories in movies, and then eventually the directors that I've invested time and with are going to transcend to the next level. And then I hope they take me along with me, because I know as an editor, I can't really break through until I have a director that breaks through. I always like to reference one of my favorite movies is Whiplash. And, Tom Cross, he was in a very similar position. He was a little different than me, but, he paired himself with a director that he saw had a lot of potential and cut a short film for him. That short film got them funding to do the feature. And then a year after the feature, he's winning an Oscar. and now he's, doing James Bond. So there's clearly like you can't do it alone. You need to be partnered with people who are really talented and are ready to break through the next level. And so that's kind of been my focus and my goal for the last decade.
So I'm not sure how much higher you can go after you've made the greatest movie of all time.
Oh, oh wait, are you talking about Willys or are you talking about Whiplash?
Yeah, Willys Wonderland.
Well, I appreciate that. That movie was really, really fun. And that was one of the biggest efforts that I tried to put into it. And was it's fun. It's not taking itself too seriously. And because of that, and because of Nick Cage, obviously, it just had it felt like it couldn't fail. And so many things happened. We shot that movie in February of last year. We wrapped on, I flew back from Atlanta to LA on March 1st. And, I started working at my office for about 2 weeks. And then a year ago today, actually, was when we all started working from home. And had the whole quarantine lockdown happened while we were in Atlanta making that movie, there's no way we would have recovered and finished that film. It would have just kind of died right there because it was so tightly made. We had such a small window of time. But thankfully, we got it done. I got back to LA. And, for the first 3 months of quarantine, I was happy as could be. I had a movie to work on. And, I didn't get a chance to work with my directors and producers in the room together, which is always preferred, but we were able to remote finish this feature film. And I made the most of my time in Atlanta while they were shooting. I have a little bit different workflow than a lot of other editors. I don't have an assistant editor. I don't have an intern. I do it all myself. So every day I would get the previous day's footage. I was staying at a house where I had set up like a edit bay for myself, and I would prep that day's dailies. And then I'd start building my assembly. So by the time we wrapped picture, I had already had 35 to 40 minutes of the movie assembled. And I was screening it for producers, screening it for directors. We were all very happy with what we were getting, so much so that we were able to attract some additional funding during production because people were seeing the story come together. And then, so by the time I got back to LA, I had about 2 to 3 weeks to finish my editor's assembly, which is me just working alone, building the movie based on the footage I have and the script that I've been given. And then I brought in our director, Kevin Lewis, and I showed him the film. He was really happy with the general tone of it. And then he and I worked together for about 3 to 4 weeks to get his cut. And then we spent another 3 to 4 weeks dialing in the producer's cut before we handed it off for effects and sound and music and all that. But the movie really made itself in the way that the premise was so perfect, in a way that you just had to really make the most of the footage that you had. And I really put a lot of effort into pacing and fun. I wanted people dancing along with Nick while he's cleaning. I wanted them, cheering for him when he's stomping, the creatures to death, and feeling like the hero emerged at the end. And so I've been so happy to see that the feedback has been positive, that people kind of get it. It's one of those movies that in quarantine everybody kind of needs right now, just to feel good and laugh and watch something that doesn't require a whole lot of thought, just some fun watching.
Yeah, I actually caught it a while back in a Discord stream with a few friends, and all of them loved it. Everyone absolutely loved it. It's one of those movies that if one person took it too seriously, it might have fallen apart. So
totally. And I think there was a serious awareness when we were making it. And, all filmmakers that were on board were dead serious, and like we were very serious about the quality of it. But, when it was a real, I had a real moment. I went and visited set one day, and I'm just looking at all of these adults playing with expensive toys and making, just for the sake of making entertainment. And it's hard to not get giddy and not take that too seriously. I've worked on movies that have had very serious tones, and they're much harder to be great because they're held to that standard of seriousness. And if you're not an Oscar-worthy film, you end up, it's easy to poke holes in it as to why it's not a great movie. But with a movie like Willys, you just need it to be fast, fun, and high energy, and people will love it. And obviously Nick just delivered. It was so fun to be able to cut his performance because I've always loved actors that give a very minimal performance. One of my favorite movies is Drive, as a lot of people that love films love that movie because of how minimal Gosling's character is, and he doesn't say much, but you get all the emotion and the power of the film just through his looks and his timing. And Nick really brought that to this movie, and you can convey all these different things without saying anything. And so that's that do more with less kind of thing. And then when it came time to for the fight scenes, then they got very frenetic and crazy and packed with sound and grunts and all this, but there was a lot of room for for silence and space too, which I thought really helped. It also helped with the tension in times too. So yeah, it was a fun experience.
Yeah, Nick Cage was absolutely perfect for that movie. I can't really imagine any other actor doing that.
As far as I know, they only went to one actor when they were sending it out, and they wanted Nick, and Nick agreed to it over a weekend reading of the script. And once he agreed, they never looked at anybody else. So it'd be hard to imagine. You could put other people in that role, but where it would be potentially iconic is Nick. And so he's made a lot of movies that I've loved over the years. And that was my first experience working with him. So to have the non-speaking Nick Cage role be my kind of contribution to his legacy, I'm pretty stoked on that.
I think Nick Cage accepts almost all of the movies he's given, though.
I've heard that said too. I think he's evolved. I think there was definitely a period 15, 20 years ago where he was just accepting anything. But I think he started to search out, because he's a strange guy, right? So I think he's looking for strange, unique roles. And, I saw some stuff in the dailies where Nick would, he would speak when he wasn't in character for the moment. But he made a comment that he was like, this was just like being 8-year-old Nick with a video camera in his backyard making home movies. Like, it brought him back to that like childlike thing. So I don't think he's just picking movies for money or because he's Nick Cage and he just needs to be working all the time. I think he's picking movies like Willys or Mandy because they're unique and they give him a unique opportunity to push his kind of envelope of what he does. And people expect Nick to be Nick, and I think while he can still do it, he's got to keep pushing it. So I think Willys was just another notch in that belt of being Nick being unique. I think he does work a lot, but he also has some good taste. So I think it's gotten a lot better in the last 5 years as far as the movies he's done.
Yeah, Mandy was really good as well. That one was a lot of fun.
Yeah, we use that a lot as a reference for certain things. When we were putting together the package to get Willys made, we used a lot of footage. So actually kind of how I got on the film was one of my best friends is Dave Newbert, the cinematographer, and he had paired with Kevin Lewis, the director, through a mutual connection of theirs. And Kevin was in need of an editor to put together kind of a sizzle of what Willys Wonderland should be. At that time, it was called Wally's Wonderland, but what Willys Wonderland should be. So he came over to my office with about 30 DVDs, which I couldn't even use because you can't even really use DVDs right now, of Nick Cage movies and a bunch of other horror films that he thought were inspirational. He wanted to cut together like a 90-second kind of fake trailer for what Willys Wonderland would be. So I sourced a lot of footage from Mandy, a lot of footage from other Nick Cage movies and other horror films. And I made this fake trailer of Willys Wonderland that they took to AFM last November, and then basically immediately sold the foreign distribution rights to it. And that's what really kind of got the ball rolling. So through that little project, I bonded with the director, and then he wanted to work with me on the film. So 2 months later, he brought me on to do the full edit. But we really had a good sense of what we were trying to do well before we made it. And then Kevin really storyboarded the heck out of the movie. And because we only had 20 days to shoot it, Nick would only work 10-hour days, and he was only maybe working 4 days a week. So like they really had to maximize every shooting day on set, especially considering all the action scenes and fight scenes we had and puppets. They were not foolproof. Those things caused a lot of technical issues that we had to work around, but we were able to pull off a lot of the movie practically, which I was a huge fan of. There was definitely some effects enhancing of some of the creatures and how they move and how they sound, but all in all, it was done pretty practically. And when I look back at my original editor's assembly from last May, it's really close to what the final product ended up being. So I'm super proud of that.
So another thing is that there's, I believe, an upcoming Five Nights at Freddy's movie coming out sometime in the future.
Yeah, I think Blumhouse is behind it.
Oh, really? That's going to be...
I believe so.
It's hard to imagine a premise as silly as that and they're probably going to take a very serious approach to it as well. So
I believe so. There was a lot of, when the hype was building for Willys, everybody was saying it was a knockoff of Five Nights. And, we were well aware of that when we made it, that Five Nights existed and that, it's the premise and the idea was similar. But what we have, and I like to think our movie is more about the janitor and less about Willys Wonderland. And if there were ever an expansion of a sequel or a prequel, it would revolve around the janitor. So it's not necessarily about animatronics, about this mystery character, the janitor. So, and I think Five Nights at Freddy's doesn't really have that. So, I get the comparison. It is real, but it's also, in this this industry, it's kind of who gets there first. And I know they had a lot of development problems with that movie because they're trying to make it like $100 million PG-13 movie. And when you do something that big, there's a lot of ways that it can get sidetracked. And I think because Willys was so focused on being what it was, and we had Nick, it all came together really fast. And, and then with the way it all went together in post, like it delayed, the pandemic delayed the production of Five Nights at Freddy's even more. So it's like, I did at one point have concerns like, were we going to get sued and lose the movie because it was too close? But, obviously once we go ahead with it, I'm sure they had legal counsel saying, no, you should be fine. But, as far as I know, there was no issue. But yeah, it is similar premise, but way different movie.
Tried reading a little bit about the games. I haven't played any of them. And supposedly there's some ridiculous lore in them. Like there's this entire universe of things, or it's really, really, really complex and convoluted story.
I think one of the weird places where we were a little bit guilty of being too similar was in some of the backstory stuff. But, and I believe, Five Nights at Freddy's is much more of a jump scare, pop out, hide in the dark kind of movie, where this movie, or Willys, had a really different tone to it, in the sense that we were creating these scary moments. But at the moment when the creature is supposed to attack and you're supposed to be most scared is when the janitor was the most calm, and he would just flip the switch and dismantle the situation in a way that was comedic, not scary. So you had this like buildup of tension, then a payoff of like, oh wow, okay, it was a different outcome than, especially in the very first fight when he's fighting Ozzy, because nobody knows. And that was the first fight scene we shot and the first fight scene that I cut. And from the moment he gets nicked on the face and then breaks the broom over his knee, it's game over for these creatures. They have no chance, but yet they keep trying. And and then so it's, again, the biggest thing that we had in our favor was the janitor. And I want to know more about the janitor. I've talked with Kevin about some ideas that I have. I mean, not that I'm a writer, but like where else could the janitor go? What about his origin story? He's got this kind of superhero quality to him where nothing about him, and that was deliberate. We wanted him to be very much a mystery, and wanting leaving people wanting to know more about him. Because originally he was supposed to say one line at the end of the film, and it was scripted, and it was there, but it was Nick's idea to not say anything. He stuck to it. He said, if the janitor only speaks when he needs to, and he doesn't need to. And when Nick says something like that, everybody listens.
Yeah, that could have been a very powerful emotional moment for the audience, I can imagine.
It could have been, but the line would have had to been just one of those perfect lines. And I think that they tried writing a few lines for him to say, but I feel like silence is powerful, and anything might have come off as cheesy, and again, like maybe it would have been too serious, and it would have just kind of wrinkled the audience in the wrong moment of the film, instead of just leaving it silent and up to the audience's interpretation. I'm always a big fan of letting the audience interpret it for themselves. It's so funny when people come back with fan theories about what this meant, what that meant, and oftentimes those things meant nothing, but people add meaning to them because they see things in it that others didn't see, and that's what's so great about movies.
So about some of your other movies, what are those like?
So the first two films I did were with the same director, Rob Hamilton. One was called Key, and the other was called The Suffering. Very much slow-paced horror thrillers, dealt with big themes. They were the films I talked about earlier, where we learned a lot about the process of movie making and biting off more than we can chew. And so, we learned a lot from there. And then a couple years later, I did a movie called Boomtown, which was totally different than everything else. This was a movie that had no real script. It had like a 30-page treatment where we had a character who was basically going to go to Williston, North Dakota to work in the oil fields. And, we had developed some contacts. And I say we because we had 7 people on this crew. There was director, producer, cinematographer, camera assistant, and like a production coordinator, and one other camera operator. And we all went up together and made this movie together. So, it was very much a team effort, even though like I was the editor, this, that, and the other thing. We all did so much up there. We wore different hats because this was a true indie film. And we went up and made this kind of docu-style film where we used real people that lived in Williston, North Dakota. We used real oil workers, and then we brought in some actors to help with the storytelling. But what made that movie so unique was because we didn't have a script, a lot of the movie was made in the edit, and particularly time passage. Our character was supposed to be up on working in this oil rig for 6 months when we were only there for 3 weeks shooting. But we had to create all these little scenes and ways to showcase time passage. And that movie was a struggle in many ways, but it came out very authentic and very real. After we got back from North Dakota, we went on holiday break, and then I had done an assembly of the film, but we realized like our first act was a little thin. It needed some more, so we did some strategic reshooting in LA to help tell the opening of the film a little more impactful, to set our character up, and then that really helped bring that whole film together. And then I did another movie called Murder in the Woods. Director Luis Iga had Danny Trejo in it. It was kind of your Cabin in the Woods style thriller with an all Latino cast, and it was all contained to one house. This much more traditional horror film, but to have Danny Trejo be the hero of that was really awesome. And then I did this movie called And Then There Was Eve. Again, very different tonally than anything else I've done. It dealt with a trans character and her wife coming to terms with the transition in a very psychological kind of twisted way. It's a really multi-layered movie that is pretty powerful. And I know it came out at a time when there wasn't really an actual trans actor playing a trans character. And I think that was one of the things that was super unique about it. One of my favorite parts about the movie is it had a lot of music was a huge part of it, a lot of live music. I'm a drummer, I play music, and I just love whenever I can incorporate practical music into a movie. I think it really is really fun and dynamic. And you can really, when the score is also being played on the screen by the actors, you just get this really immersive. That's why Whiplash is so good, because you're seeing the music of the film being made in front of you by the actors. You can't fake that. So that was really great. And then then it was a couple years until I got another film, because it's just really hard to get any films going. So then when Willys came up, that was that. And now I'm starting this new movie called The Last Deal, which will be about a California pot grower upstate before pot became legal. Then all of a sudden the regulations of pot became legal and he started to go out of business. So he has to broker this one last deal to basically retire from the game. And of course it all goes haywire. That movie is going to be very much in the tone of Heat. And, so that one's going to have a lot more action. It's got a lot of stunt guys in it. So all in all, the movies have ranged from horror to kind of a documentary film to action to, so it's just, the variety has been great. That's one of my favorite parts of it all. We haven't been like pigeonholed into one style.
Yeah, it's always nice to work on a variety of different things, because and
that's truthfully, it's one of my favorite things about this industry is, there's this unknown, like it's a tough part of it too, don't get me wrong, but not knowing what the next project is going to be is really exciting, because you get surprised all of a sudden. I didn't know Willys Wonderland was going to come up till a month before it came up, and then it affected my entire year. And now this movie's going to have the same thing. So it's like you just really don't know what you're going to get into. It's not your traditional 9 to 5 where you go to work and repeat the same day. Every day is different. Even when I'm on a project for 3 months, every day is different, because the footage is always different, and then the revisions are always different, and the problems are different. So that's got to be one of my favorite parts of it, is the fact that it's never the same.
So what advice would you give to an aspiring film editor?
That's a good question, because I'm still trying to figure it out, to be honest with you. I went a very anti-traditional route, in the sense of like, I didn't go into the studio system and apprentice. I kind of went the freelance route. I built up my client and my clients and my partners through time and organically. So for me, what really worked is not just being a good editor, it's being someone people want to edit with, being a passionate filmmaker and teaming up with other passionate filmmakers. That to me has been the most successful partnerships, because LA is full of people who are trying to make it, and there's a few people who have made it. And when you're trying to make it into whatever position you want to be, whether it's producer, writer, director, actor, editor, you have to surround yourself with other people who are in the same position, because as I said earlier, you can't do it alone. So, I've tried to maintain myself as an editor exclusively, and it hasn't been easy. I've had to take side jobs, and I'll be honest, I don't just cut film, I cut everything. I do corporate videos, I do stuff for the medical world, world. I do commercials, I do music videos, I do explainer videos, I do short films for little to no money. I want to just keep editing. And then when the films come along, that's when I will shut down some other work to just do the films. So for me, it was about hustling, doing any project that you can get your hands on, because you never know who that network is going to lead to. And so that's, I guess, the second thing I would say is your network is everything. I can do the family tree of network and trace it back 15, 20 people to like the first person I worked with as to why I got Willys Wonderland. This DP that got me Willys Wonderland, I've been working with since 2011. And those years of building and trust are why we are able to get projects like that together. And so I would say your network is everything. The people that you team up with on your first project, you might still be working with. So don't burn bridges, be someone that people want to work with a second time, and really just, put the passion first, because, we're lucky if we're able to get any work in this industry. It's a really special industry to work in. I made a point that in my career to put the love of filmmaking first. And, that has really helped, because when you team up with someone else who has the similar ideas, it's obvious and you bond. So that would be one of my biggest things is just maintain and build your network and be someone people want to work with.
Finally, where can my listeners find and connect with you?
Through my website, ryanliebert.com would be kind of the direct place to contact me through. And then also on IMDb, my contact is there. I'm self-represented, so please feel free to reach out to me directly. I'm super prompt if you're interested in working with me, and I've got plenty of references and whatnot, So yeah, I would say through my website, ryanliebert.com.
All right. Thank you very much, Ryan. That's all for today. Don't forget you can subscribe to Kino Society on iTunes and Spotify.